السلام عليكم جميعا. I hope I will do as inspiring presentation as the previous ones. Especially starting this morning with a very interesting musical experience. As one of my I'm also a musician, so it was close to my heart to start the day with this musical experience. I'm going to share with you actually a story on what's happening when it comes to venture investments in Saudi Arabia specifically, and what we should do next based on what had happened actually over the last 5 years. And I would do a comparison on what happened over the 5 years in Saudi Arabia, compared what happened globally, regionally, but also comparing what's happening in Saudi Arabia to emerging markets. This is the scene of how global venture investment and what's happening globally. The whole world actually witnessed a decline when it comes to venture investment, with a minus 42% when it comes to total investment and venture investment, and also a decline of minus 30% when it comes to the number of deals invested in the scene. Again, also, the MENA region witnessed a decline when it comes to venture investment, especially I'm talking about last year, 2023. Despite this decline, Saudi Arabia was actually on a rise compared to what's happening globally and regionally. So there was an increase of plus 30% when the total deployed capital investing in tech startups in Saudi Arabia, despite the decline number of deals. This is also a comparison compared to similar, I would say, or emerging markets in general. Again, also, there was a decline versus what's happening in Saudi Arabia, which is a rise. And that's actually a transformational for many reasons. Definitely, Vision 2030 has launched many activities and programs to stimulate venture investment. One of them, actually, what we did at SVC, but you can also imagine about the other programs, the products. We talked about RDIA, NTDP, MCIT in general, the whole initiatives and programs that will unlock and stimulate venture investments in Saudi Arabia. This is actually just comparing emerging markets globally and where is the positioning for Saudi Arabia. We actually jumped to being the fifth if we comparing also emerging markets. For the first time, if you compare Saudi Arabia to the MENA region, Saudi Arabia becomes number one in terms of the total deployed capital investing in venture capital. In terms of the total deployed capital over the 5 years, it's raising actually, it reached actually $3+ billion. I remember 2018, there was only $60 million of deployed capital. This is 21x in 5 years. Though we still believe that we are scratching the surface and more to come. And I believe also based on the presentations this morning and the discussion we have, that the time is prime now to stimulate strategic sectors in alignment with national mandate to stimulate venture investment. We were sector agnostic and stage agnostic as a government funded funds program to stimulate these sectors, but I think the time is prime now to go more into sector specific actually investments, indirectly and directly, and in this context, we might actually work together as we are already in advanced discussions with RDIA when it comes to investments and the funds they want to launch. This is, I don't want to bother you with more numbers, but I think these are, if we see, compared actually what's happening in 2023, these are where the strategic sectors. His Excellency Suwaha mentioned about how we evolved when it comes to fintech, and a lot of progression happened at the central bank, at the Capital Market Authority, the sandbox, the debugging the regulations to allow creative entrepreneurs and innovators to create more fintech companies. We would love to do more with other strategic sectors, but also e-commerce, retail, software, SaaS, healthcare, health tech, edtech, and enterprise software. These are actually the sectors that I was evolved over the last few years. but I believe now more other sectors will be untapped and unlocked to do more and more as the ecosystem evolves. Another interesting observation happened actually related to venture investment in Saudi Arabia is how this movement attracted top-tier international VCs, private equity, growth capital firms to do more investments backing homegrown Saudi-based companies, or even sometimes companies relocating or expanding to Saudi Arabia. I was always telling my team, I was thinking that the top tier VCs will join the scene around 2027, 2030, but things got accelerated. The pace was remarkable, how through the different activities and programs cascaded out of Vision 2030, will actually attracting these international investors. Next week, we are meeting top-tier VCs actually to negotiate investing in their funds because they want to do more in Saudi Arabia. But these are the examples where Tapi, Tamara, Flower, Tsala, Hala, Ulin, Lendo, or Iowa actually managed to back top-tier Wellington, Invest Corp, TPG, Sequoia, General Atlantic, and other top-tier VCs and investors globally to keep an eye on what's happening in Saudi Arabia, but also to have a skin in the game and invest in homegrown local companies in Saudi Arabia. When it comes actually to the MENA drop, maybe I talked more about the mandate here. For me, I cannot actually have a speech without promoting SVC. So SVC falls under NDF, the National Development Fund, part of the SME group. We are a government fund of funds program, but also we do co-investment and direct investment activities. We started 2018 with a mandate actually to stimulate venture investments. This is actually the different asset classes that we get into. So we back VC funds, we back also growth capital funds, private equity, venture debt, and private debt funds. Since inception, we have backed and approved around 53 funds that have backed around 740 plus companies. And these funds that we backed actually participated in 1,500 plus different rounds and deals. And you can see there is not only the commercial value and the investment that's happening, but also the developmental KPIs and metrics that we keep monitoring when it comes to job creation and also how many fund managers that we backed. These are samples of the fund managers that we have backed so far, and also the direct investment companies that through our co-investment program that we already did so far. And you can see here the companies are not only, and I think VC is a global game. Since inception, we were backing not only homegrown companies, but also backing companies starting elsewhere, and then they want to expand or move actually to relocate to Saudi Arabia. This is like just slicing the sectors that we have backed through our portfolio of investments. Definitely, there has been a huge impact on the private capital market in general, including VC growth, private equity. What's interesting, actually, the impact when it comes to the multiple of private capital being stimulated through investment. So each real or dollar we put in a fund unlocked 5x from the private investors. And this is like includes high net worth individuals, family offices, corporates, and other private investors getting more into this scene. And trust me, years back, nobody would invest in tech and VC. It was only the 60 million I talked, it was 2008. That was really recent, which is 5 years back, where everybody would go into real estate and the public markets and other asset classes. But that's actually a new movement would come to. And this is where we mentioned about it's the 21x in terms of the multiple comparing the last 5 years. Saudi Arabia used to be number 4th across the MENA region, reached number 1. We want to maintain this. And now we are also comparing Saudi Arabia with the global index to make sure that we are part of the global competitiveness when it comes to VCs and investing in technologies. Samples also about attracting top-tier investors coming in. And based on this movement happening in Saudi Arabia, what's next? So first of all, we want to amplify our impact by building on our core. When we started this, it wasn't actually starting from scratch. We tapped on how governments globally have managed to stimulate venture investments. So we tapped onto working model, the Korean venture investment, KEVIC, and then we also visited the British Business Capital, the Patient Capital, the Canadian, how governments are really stimulated. So we worked on a working model globally to be replicated, fine-tuned, and being implemented in Saudi Arabia with the local context to make sure that it's impactful. And the numbers you saw was part of this working model. We want to continue backing first-time fund managers, emerging fund managers, experienced fund managers, local, regional, and international fund managers to do more and invest more in homegrown companies in Saudi Arabia, but also attracting companies and investing in companies that are expanding and doing more business in Saudi Arabia. Another thing that we are also doing, we are taking our partnership with government/public entities to do more sector-focused investment. We started a program launched by NTDP to focus on deep tech sectors, so how we can attract VCs locally, regionally, and internationally to do specific sectors. We're in serious talks with RDIA, Naveed, Dr. Muhammad, about also backing funds that will be focused on the semiconductors, and based on your great, great presentation today, highlighting also the full stack of semiconductors. I think that's a huge potential to also back fund managers and investors, and to attract international investors to more of investments, but also welcoming. I'm so proud today with His Excellency Suha, these companies that are coming to Saudi Arabia and to do more when it comes to semiconductors, how we can do it together, but also having a skin in the game by investing alongside institutional investors to do more and more. And last but not the least, I think now we are in a shape to work more on having Saudi Arabia part of the global scene when it comes to competitiveness, to venture investments in technology. As I told you the story, we were keen to be number one across the MENA region. That's history. I think next, how we could be one of the top 10, 15 countries globally when it comes to venture investments. That's the aspiration, and that's what we are doing with my amazing team. Thank you all.